Hey, kia ora, Helen Brums here, coming to you live from Surprise in Arizona. Hope you're all having a super fantastic, sparkling day. Welcome to Before the Dirt Nap podcast number 1463. It's time for a staycation. Wow, cool. You're going, what is a staycation? If you have never heard the term staycation, it's been around for a few years. If you've never heard the term staycation, that means that you stay in place, like your home becomes your hotel, and you get out and explore your local community and find things that you can do for, what is available. If I was to knock on your door tomorrow and go, show me your area, your local area, where would you take me? What would you show me? What are some of the places that not many tourists know about? What sort of fun things can you do in your community? What events are going on in your community? There's all sorts of ways that you can. Oh, I forgot to bring that in here. Zephy, you want to grab the paper for me? No, she's sprawled out on the floor. Okay, so a lot of communities have local newspapers, and in there they have a list of events of things that are coming up, and you could incorporate those into your staycation. So it's staycation time. And why do we need a staycation? Well, you just do. Staycations are great times to it's something completely different. It's out of the ordinary. It's not something that you do very often. And it's just, we need to take breaks. We need to reset. Like every now and again, a computer will need to be rebooted to help release some of the memory and the cache and all of that. I don't know. I think those are the right terms. So that it works better and works faster. Because sometimes you'll notice that your computer's starting to slow down. And you're going, why is it going so slow? When was the last time you restarted, rebooted it? And that, because it helps clear out some of the goopy stuff that it's holding on to, like memory and cache and all of that sort of stuff. And when you turn it back on, woohoo, it's running perfectly well again. So, I just realized my light's not on. There we go. I'm kind of feeling dark here. So you can, so a staycation is like a reboot on the computer. If you don't have time to get away for a regular vacation, like, 7 or more days, then a staycation is a great way that you can, one, learn about what's available in what is around in your local community. Where are go discover a new restaurant or something like that, or, restaurants, or maybe a cafe. Find, what are the best ones in your neighborhood? Not your neighborhood, your local community. What events are going on in your local community? Or it could just be like doing some stuff at home, which is not maintenance, which is not gardening, which is not housekeeping. It could be something like, let's see, let's give you some ideas on staycations. So if you are having a staycation at home, I like to issue the Staycation Challenge. Now, my Staycation Challenge is, what can you do and select 2 to 3 days, and you have to plan in advance for your staycation. And in your staycation over these 2 to 3 days, you are planning activities that are going to cost little to no money at all to do. And you have a budget. So for the Staycation Challenge, you set yourself a budget. And I always like to say $20 per person per day. And that includes your food, it includes parking, it includes gas in the car, it includes entry fees. So what can you do in your local area that would cost less than $20 per person per day? I used to do $10. We bumped it up to $20. We're giving you a little bit of leeway. But there are some ways that you can get around. I'm even going to give you the cheat sheet. Oh my gosh, the cheat sheet. Oh, I'm going to write that down. Hang on. The cheat sheet. That's all right. That's for another project. I just remembered I need to do a cheat sheet for something else. So some of the cheat sheets for the Staycation Challenge is that you're planning on, okay, so maybe it's going to be in a week's time. Okay, tomorrow here is going to be Friday. So we're going to start next Friday, and we're going to have, Friday evening, all day Saturday, all day Sunday to do your staycation. So you got 2 and a bit days, and it's going to be $20 per person per day. Okay, so how can we get around that? Well, we're going to go grocery shopping on like Wednesday or Thursday to get all the food together that we're going to need to make sure that all of our meals are already prepped and ready to go. Even maybe picnics. What are we going to take on the picnic? We might do some bread and cheese and, cold meats, some salads, cold chicken, make your own sandwiches or something. I don't know. Just, what do you want to take with you? And you've got the cooler there with all the ice packs and everything in it. Maybe you've got one that plugs into your car battery. And although you got to check the timing on the car battery. Does it turn off? Do the cigarette lighter adapter thingies, do they turn off when the engine turns off? Or is one of yours one of those ones that will trickle feed whatever you've got plugged in? So then you have to be cautious about how long you're away. Also, be conscious of the weather. Make sure you check out the weather. Is it going to be a cool weekend? Or is it like us going to be somewhere up in the triple digits in Fahrenheit? For those back in New Zealand, that's in the 40s. Is it going to be somewhere up that's going to be high temperatures? So maybe you want to plan for things that you can do inside. Let's see. So you plan ahead for the meals. You already pre-buy the food. You can take it with you. Maybe you might decide to have breakfast at home and lunch and dinner at home, but for lunch you're going to go somewhere for lunch, and maybe it could be like a street vendor, a food truck. Let's see what else. A diner usually has good prices as well. But you remember, you've got that budget of $20 per person per day. So maybe taking a picnic lunch with you might be a really good idea. Then it's sort of like, okay, where are we going and how are we going to get there? Is there public transportation near your house that you could take the public transportation rather than taking the car and using the gas and then having to maybe fill the gas tank up? If it's something where you're requiring the car, then how many miles are you going to do? How many miles do you get per in the car with a full tank of gas, and fill it up on Friday morning before you start your weekend? So it's full, it's ready to go, it's going to last you the weekend. Maybe you'll drive down to the park and ride, and that's where you get the public transportation from to take you to wherever you want to go. And you pre-buy your passes for the public transportation. Maybe you have annual passes to certain parks, and you decide, well, let's go to the park for the day. Just remember, you have $20 per person per day to spend for your whole budget for that day. So remember those. If you're going to go to one of your places that have the annual passes and things, what are you going to do for meals and drinks while you're in there? I know I'm making it tough. So you've got to think about all these little things. So it's planning. If you've got, if it's just yourself, you know what you can do for that day. If it's a couple, what are you going to work out? Who wants to do what, when, and how? Are you going to trade off? Well, Saturday, you get to choose Saturday. Sunday, you work on Sunday. Have you got kids? Get the kids involved with the planning. Where do they want to go? What do they want to see? Are there museums in your areas that may not have a admittance fee? Are they free to enter? Look in visit your local visitors center. Most of them have online access where you can go like visitor's guide for San Diego, visitor's guide for LA. You can go to those different places and things, and they will have different activities that can be done, a calendar, an event calendar there. So you can go ahead and see what's on over that weekend and what can we do for free. There may be a fair that you can go to, a street parade that you can go see. Farmers markets. I love farmers market. If you can go to a farmers market in the morning, like around, depending on how long the farmers market goes for and the timing and everything, maybe you could have breakfast at the farmers market. Maybe you could get lunch, your picnic stuff for your lunch, fresh fruits and vegetables, farmers market. Love that. There's all sorts of different things that you can do. And so you can, maybe if you've got kids or something, it's going and trying a new playground that's in the local area. Maybe it's if you're in a place where you have a little bit of wind, maybe you could go kite flying. It doesn't take much to buy a kite, and in fact, you can actually. We used to home make our kites at home. Dad would give us a couple of bits of dowel that would wrap together in the middle, tie them together in the middle, and then we'll put newspaper around the edges and things. It was just fun. Going fishing. I would tell you this. I love to fish. I always have to have somebody go. I haven't done fishing in years, but I find it very relaxing, very peaceful. It's in nature. I'm happy to go fishing with anybody. The only condition with fishing is that if I catch a fish, somebody has to take it off the hook. They later have to scale it and debone it, but I will happily cook it. It's just that little piece in between of catching and cooking that I need assistance with, because I don't handle fish very well, live fish very well. But if somebody else wants to dehead it, debone it, scale it, all that sort of stuff, and make it into fillets, I'm happy to cook the fillets or the fillets of fish. Maybe you've got national parks in the area. When was the last time you were in a national park? Maybe it's hiking one of the trails that's in there. Maybe it's something as simple as, if you're by yourself, you've got this book that you've been wanting to read, and you just decide you're going to do a staycation at home. You're not going to, if somebody comes to, you're not going to leave the house. Maybe you're not going to leave the house. Maybe you will leave the house. Who knows? But you've got this one book that you've been trying to read that you really, really want to read. And so you just take a day off. So you have your staycation at home, reading this book that you want to read. Or maybe it's a couple in a series. I know I've got one series of books that I absolutely love reading. And I'm like 2 or 3 books behind from when the first one, I've got like 2 or 3 books in the series that I've yet to read, and now the third or fourth one of that series is due to come out. And I'm like, oh, I have to catch up. So maybe that for me will be a staycation, that I just take a day off, sit in my recliner if the puppy allows me to, and I just sit there and read my book. Maybe it's something as simple as that, and get through as many of those books to catch up on the series. Maybe you're reading a series of books and you need to catch up. Maybe it's something simple as doing a reading weekend where you're just going to be reading all weekend. Maybe you could intersperse it with movies. So, because, actually I did read that Harry Potter book in one day. So this is true story. So when we're living in Virginia, Brad's middle son came to me and he says, "Oh, can we order this book off Amazon?" And I looked at the book, and it was the very first Harry Potter. No, the second one. It was the second one in the series. And Chamber of Secrets. Yeah, that was the second one, wasn't it? Yeah. And he goes, "Can I read?" And I said, I went, "Oh, hang on. I've seen that book somewhere before." And it turned out that my mother-in-law had sent the youngest stepson a box of books to encourage him to read. And because at that time he wasn't very much into reading, didn't really want to read. So she had bought him these books to read. And one of them happened to be The Chamber of Secrets and the second book in Harry Potter. And so I go, "What is this series?" And, I had seen the book in the box, but I hadn't really looked at it much. But I just recognized the cover because Chris had shown me the cover of the book. And I says, "Hang on, I think we might have that." And so I went upstairs to this box of books and pulled it out for him. And I said, "But that stays here at the house." So we didn't see him for the rest of the weekend as he went and read that book. And he says, "Oh, you might like it." And I'm like, "What's it all about?" So that's how I got started with the Harry Potter book. So we got book 1, we had book 2. So we read the series, and Brad started reading them as well. And then the third book was due to come out. And so I had pre-ordered it, so it would be delivered. It arrived at the house on the weekend. We had the boys with us. This is the funniest thing. The box arrived, and Chris wanted to read it. I said, "No." He goes, "Why?" I says, "I get to read it first." He goes, "Why?" I said, "My name's on the box." It had been mailed to me on my name. I said, "My name's on the box. I get to read it first." And he's like, "But I want to read it, and you won't let me take it home with me." And I went, "Nope, it stays here at the house." And so I went up to him. And he goes, "Well, can you go read it now?" And I went, "Well, I just got to finish this." "Oh, we'll take care of that." And he was wanting to take care of it. He basically shoved me up into my office where I had this easy chair. Where is it? Oh, that's now in the bedroom, where I had this chair, and said I was not allowed to come out till I finished the book. And I'm like, well, this is the greatest weekend ever. And he made sure that nobody disturbed me, that I didn't leave the room, so that he could be the next person to read that book, because he only had, that weekend with us to read it. It was the funniest thing. So I got a mini staycation in my office with my feet up, reading that book. I read it cover to cover. It was book number 3, which I think's Prisoner of Azkaban. I haven't read them in a long time. And so I read the book, and I had to sneak out to go to the bathroom. And he says, "What are you doing out of that room? Get back in that room." You must. So I had to go to the bathroom. And if I wanted my water bottle filled up, he would run downstairs, fill it up, and bring it back to me. But I will tell you this. It was probably around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I mean, the thing arrived like around 10 o'clock in the morning or something. And it was like, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and I was done with the book. And I could hear the kids playing around downstairs, and I knew that Brad had put them down into the basement. No, they weren't in the basement at that point. They were all sitting downstairs playing around or whatever. And so I went into Chris's room and I put the book on his bed. Didn't say a word. He wasn't in the room. I didn't say a word to anybody. I grabbed my stuff and I went downstairs, and because I had missed lunch. I wasn't allowed to eat lunch. I had to read the book. And so, of course, I was hungry at this time. And Brad was sort of pottering around in the kitchen. I don't remember what he was doing. And he looks at me and he goes, "Are you done with that book?" And I went, "Yeah." And he goes, "What have you done with it?" I said, "It's on Chris's bed." And I don't remember where the boys were at that point, but they eventually came back into the room, and Chris sees me and says, "What are you doing down here? You're supposed to be reading that book." I says, "Well, I needed a break." I didn't tell him I'd finished it. I just told him I had to have a break. I was getting sore sitting in the seat for too long. My legs needed to be, body needed to be moving and all that sort of stuff. And actually, they were outside playing with the kids outside in the cul-de-sac. And he's like, "Oh." And I said, "What are you doing inside?" He says, "Oh," and whatever he had to do. So he went off and did whatever he had to do. And of course, it took him into his bedroom. And he goes, "Why is this on my bed?" I said, "Well, because I finished it and you wanted to read it next." He said, "Well, why didn't you tell me? How long has it been sitting on my bed?" Because now he had lost reading time. He expected me to come out of the room, call him inside, hand him the book so he could go sit up in the room for the rest of the evening and the next day and read the book. Yeah. He got the book read by the end of the weekend. I had it read in like 5 hours or something like that. 5 hours, 3 hours, 5 hours, whatever it was, 5 hours. But yeah, but I don't think I could have sat down and read the next book in the series had it been out at the time, because I was done reading. And so when I was done reading, it was like, okay, I got to do anything tonight but read. And so if I'm doing a staycation where I'm catching up on books in a series, at the end of a book, I would do something like go and watch a movie or go out for a walk, or this was pre-Zeffy days, just find something else to do that didn't require me reading as I processed what I had read in the book. So, that's something that you can do for that as well. You could do things like, what else could you do? Let's see, with or without, you could do a, now, this is depending on budget too. So if you got the $20 per person per day, you'll work it out beforehand what you can go and see and do that keeps you inside that budget. Other times you can turn around and go, "We're not worried about the budget. This is what we want to do that weekend." Great, go for it. It could also be something as simple as staying at home and camping out at home, which is a great thing. You could, if you've got a tent, set it up in the backyard. Have a sleep out in the tent at home over the weekend. Over your staycation, you're camping out in the backyard. Or it could be the weather's not great outside, so we really can't go anywhere, although there are different museums and things you could go visit, aquariums and all that sort of stuff. And you could then turn around and set up, make a tent inside the house, blanket forts. When did you last make a blanket fort? You get the chairs out, you drape the blankets over them. Maybe you could have a sleep out in the living room and the blanket fort for the evening, camping inside. just different ideas that you could do. It could be you do a movie fest that weekend. November is James Bond month, where I'll watch a James Bond movie every night. I could turn around and say, okay, every weekend, and I'm not going to do it every night. We're up to 25, and that's 25 nights, but maybe I've got another lot of stuff going on. There's Thanksgiving in there and all that sort of stuff. So maybe I'll just do something like, maybe I'll do a weekend, a James Bond Fest weekend, because I could sit and watch James Bond back to back to back to back, no problem at all. And between the movies, you get up, you refresh, you walk around, you go outside, you get some fresh air, get food, get snacks. When I do a movie fest, I don't plan meals. I plan snacks. I do mini charcuterie boards, where I have like cold meats and cheeses and dried fruits and even fresh fruits as well. I'll put on there as well. And I get up and I walk around, and I'll make up my mini charcuterie. And this is when Brad was alive as well. We would have, if we're down in our movie theater in Virginia, we would have the coffee table there and we would just cover it with food. We did have to watch the dogs with it though, because it was perfect height for both Bear and actually Bear wasn't around when we had was Bear? trying to think, was Bear still alive when we had the basement? No, because Bear never came down in the basement. It was Gus we had when the basement was done. And of course, him being a big dog, that was perfect eating height for him. But he soon learned he wasn't allowed to touch stuff on there. But we had all sorts of stuff that we would put there, and we would just snack on it, during the movies. And usually when the movie started, we did our heaviest eating, and then towards the end, we weren't eating anything that was on the table. And then we were at the end of the movie, we'd clean it up, and we'd go upstairs, go for a walk around. We'd pause movies when we needed to for bathroom breaks, that sort of stuff. But we'll go upstairs, we'll refresh our drinks, we would refresh our charcuterie board, and then we'll go back downstairs again and sit down. And they weren't big boards, like we were just picking throughout the day. So you could do something like that for a movie fest, and I could easily do that. I make my little mini charcuterie boards. I bring everything in beforehand. Use travel guides. Look at travel guides to see what's available in your area as well. Talk to people. Talk to your neighbors about things that they've done with their kids or places that they've gone that they've enjoyed. Maybe there's a mini golf place and you could have a family mini golf tournament or something. Oh yeah, that always reminds me of the putt-putt championship of the world. So back in 98, Brad and I sitting in the apartments before we had the house. We're sitting in the apartment and he's busy channel surfing, and I'm sitting on the couch next to him reading, and he's channel surfing, and the next thing I hear is pop pop, and I'm like, what? I said, what did that say? And he goes back a channel, because I heard the word pop pop, and that's all I heard, and it was in a very serious announcer's voice. And we sat there and we watched the pop pop world championship. And Brad and I they had the sports announcers there with their very serious voices and Brad and I were cracking up every time they called it the Putt Putt World Championship or the World Champion Putt Putt Tournament or something like that. But we cracked up every time these serious announcers with their serious voices said Putt Putt, because it just sounded so out of place. And apparently it's a real thing when they do a mini golf course and you have to score a hole-in-one on the hole in order to move forward. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like real serious. They were very serious about this. They had to do their putts, and it had to be a hole-in-one every single hole in order for you to. I think there was so many that they were allowed to miss, but at the end it was whoever could get around the course with the highest number of holes in ones, and it was hilarious. I mean, they were taking it. They were very, very serious about it, and the announcers were so serious about it, but just hearing putt-putt come out in a very serious way just cracked us up. So, you could go have your own family putt-putt championship of the world or something. I don't know, go to something like that. Local high schools, when they have their games on, like football and basketball and all that. What about going and watching those? I love watching high school football. Love watching the high school football. Always used to love it when the oldest one was playing football, and we'd go for the Friday night games at home, and we'd do some of the away games as well. But I loved watching it. It was just there was no real competition between the players of having to be the best for whatever it was. And it was just, college football and high school football. I love watching them because there's just something about the game when you've got high schoolers or college people playing that's different from the professionals game. There's just something in there in that mix that is missing when you get to professional level. So I love watching the high school and the college footballs. Are you talking about real football or soccer? American gridiron, if that helps. I keep forgetting about that thing too, because there are soccer games. I will go watch a soccer game. Yes, I have to remember that football everywhere else is what the Americans call soccer. So it's a little hard to remember that at times. But yeah, we're talking American gridiron football. The thing I like about those games, this is one of the reasons I like watching, especially high school. There's no commercials. It's all playtime. It's over and done with in a short amount of time, and way shorter amount of time than what if you're watching it on TV. If you're watching it on TV and it's been, it's a live game that's been broadcast, they got to stop every now and again for commercials, and they're taking commercial breaks, and then there's all that is one thing that I don't like about. I mean, Brad one time recorded a football game, and fast forwarding through the ads, fast forwarding through all of the stopped times, just watching the actual plays, it got down to like, I think it ended up being like about a 30 to 40-minute game. Once you fast forwarded through the commercials, fast forwarded through the breaks that the teams were taking with their huddles and everything else, and just watch the actual play time from when they snapped the ball to when they finished that play and then had to get set for the next one. It was like about a 30-minute game if you took everything else out. And I said, okay, I still don't get why it takes 3 hours to play a 30-minute game. Now, on the clock, it's a different story because you've got, is it 15 minutes per quarter or something? It's an hour-long game with all these pauses and everything else, but the actual play time was 30 minutes. I was like, rugby, you get on the field, it's 90 minutes. You with a 10-minute halftime, so it's 80 minutes, 40 minutes in each direction. Even with football/soccer, it's 90 minutes. You get a 10-minute halftime, and it's continual play. So yeah, there's some sports out there that I will watch because they're super quick and super smooth. And it's continual play. But yeah, American football, I understand that there's the commercial side of it and all that sort of thing. I think that's why I like the high school side, because there's no commercials. And if you're at a college, we went and watched James Madison, the oldest son, was actually on the cheerleaders team, so we went down to watch him cheer. And there was no broadcast or anything else. And again, it was just over an hour it was just over an hour play. It was just over an hour. And I was like, wow, it goes so fast when there's no commercials. So that's just my personal opinion. Oh yeah. And when you're watching rugby or you're watching football/soccer, there's no commercials. If you're watching the game live, there's no commercials. Yeah, at least in other countries around the world, they don't have commercials. Anyway, so there's a lot that you can do. You can go explore a cultural area of your city. Maybe there's museums and things relating to different cultures that you can go and have a look through and have a walk through. Maybe it's going and spending a day at the beach or a day at the lake or a day down by the river. I know there's some rivers where they've got like safe areas where they have like swimming holes and things like that. Maybe it could be doing something like that. Maybe you're near some place or something where they do haunted house tours or something, or they do history walking tours. There's all sorts of things you can do. Maybe you could go volunteer at the local animal sanctuary. Maybe you could do a footsteps in your ancestors tour. If you're one of those people that have been born and raised, you're living in the same town that you were born and raised in, that your parents were born and raised in, that your grandparents were born and raised in, why not do a personal walking tour and go back to different areas and reminisce about times that you were in those areas, about the school. What memories do you have from school? Videotape them so that you have them as a journal for future generations. This is, they've changed this. This is the high school I went to and haven't been back here for a while. Let's go for a walk around. Oh my gosh, they've grown. I know that the high school I went to now has 2 floors. It's building, it used to be single story, the whole school complex, all 600 students. We had, and this is what's really funny, the town I grew up in, the town I went to high school in, there were less students in the high school than there were in all 3 of my stepson's graduating class from high school. So their graduating classes for high school were bigger, had more people in those graduating classes than my entire high school did. My entire high school was about 600 people. Yeah. So, but I haven't actually wandered around the school camp. I need to do that next time I'm up in that area. Let's go for a wander around the actual campus for the high school. But now I understand that some buildings have 2 floors. There's 2-story buildings, and I know that one wing got burnt down in a fire. So that's all been rebuilt and everything else. And so there's been some changes to that school. But, wandering around a school that you used to go to and reminiscing about the time and looking and, I remember when that building, they've added that building over there. Well, what used to be there was blah, 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 blah. Or, talking about like my high school where this building had, where they had a fire at the school that destroyed this part of this building. I could go back and go, well, this part of the building when I was here, my locker was situated in this particular area of this wing. which it was, and the art class, which was at the end of the building, which was destroyed, used to be my homeroom during my sixth form year, second to last year of high school. And things like that, and remembering what classes I had in that area. And of course, part of that wing was the library was sort of there, and then it had a room that extended. It was called the Arthur somebody reading room, and you had to be a certain level in high school in order to go into that room. And it was set up for studying, and it had these study desks there. It was mainly set up for studying. So students had it in was it just sixth and seventh forms? The last 2 years of high school, I think it was, that you could go in there and you could sit and study. And that was in that wing that got burnt down. So the library itself got some damage too. And I remember I used to work in the library at school. You could have school librarians, and we would work in there in the lunch hours. We would work in there in the intervals, and we would help. We would issue library books. We would return library books, put them back in the system. We would reshelve them. We would do the catalog cards that you would have. Somebody wants to go for WALK. We'll do that in a moment. And things like that. So there's a lot of memories in there, in the different school and there's different librarians that we had there that oversaw it. Oh my gosh, that was way back when people could smoke, because we had one librarian who was smoking all the time in the library. Yeah, she smoked all the time in the library, especially in the library office where we covered the books. We put the plastic covers onto the dust jackets. We put the little numbers on the spine, the little pieces on the spines with the letters on there, or the Dewey Decimal numbers on there. And that's where I learned the Dewey Decimal system, because we had to create the catalog cards, and she had it, and we actually had to roll them into a typewriter. And some of you are going to go, wait, what? So we'd write them in a typewriter, and there was a certain format we had to do. And that training came in handy when I went into the Royal New Zealand Air Force, because that's one of the libraries I worked in when I was in the Air Force. We had different libraries, and one of them was our rec library, and that was like a regular library. And so I did the plastic covers on the dust jackets. I issued the books. I returned the books. I put them on the shelves. I made up the catalog cards. I had to figure out what the Dewey Decimal system was. We had new books coming in. Where in the Dewey Decimal system did I put them? And things like that. So yeah, I had to do all of that at one point when I was on base. And then most of the other time I was either in the technical library or I was in the publications production section of it, where we actually produced the manuals that they needed to fly planes, repair planes, and all that sort of good stuff, tell people how to do their job. All the Air Force manuals started with an AF for their number. The Navy was N, and the Army was A. And then manuals that covered all three services were DM for defense manuals. DM 69 was the law book. It was about this thick, about 5 inches thick. That was 5 to 6 inches thick. I hated amending that thing. It was especially if it was a page like second to last. You still had to take all the other pages off, take that one page out, put the new page in, then put the whole thing back together again. And we had several. And then you had the DM 69A, which was the addendum to the law book. So we had the Defense Manual Law Book, which was DM 69, and then we had the DM 69A, which was the addendum to that book. And that was like a couple of inches thick, and then you had this 5 to 6 inch thick book. That was basically the law of the forces, and it went across all three forces. So yeah, there was manuals in there that would describe the uniforms that had, when you started wearing the summer uniform, when you started wearing the winter uniform, what you could wear with the summer uniform if the weather was cold, what you could wear with the winter uniform if it was hot weather, different dress standard. Did you put on your service dress uniform when you needed to put that on, compared to when you just had your regular day-to-day uniform on, and everything in your life in the Air Force or in the military, in any of the forces in New Zealand was in one of these manuals. And they had the Air Force standard, they had the Air Force procedures, the Army procedures, and the Navy procedures based on which service you were in, because we had different uniforms. And every job had a manual. This is how you do your job. So there was manuals for that. Then there was all the manuals that that were needed on the planes, and a lot of the planes have manuals that could not be taken off the plane. So their mechanic manual and their electronic manuals was kept in in the tail of some of these planes. That's where the manuals were kept, and you could take them out, and you had to actually go on board the plane, make all the change out all the pages and everything that needed to be changed out, and then put them back in the thing, because you could not take them off the plane. They had to stay on the plane. The only time they got taken off the plane was if a mechanic or an electrical engineer needed those things while they're down there at the actual piece of the plane that they were fixing at the time. And then they had to put the books straight back on the plane. And there were NOTAMs, notices to airmen, that were kept on planes as well. And we had to go and do those. And we had to do handwritten amendments on some things, on some books as well, where it wasn't changing a page, it was just changing a word. And there's a moth flying around behind me. And if it was done with a green pen, no, normally we did handwritten amendments with a red ink pen. On planes, we had to use green, because red ink did not show up under the lights. It was the green that would show up under the lights on the plane when they were flying, under the certain lighting that they had and that sort of stuff. So, yeah, the purple curtain moving behind me is Zeffie going in and out of the room. If you see it moving, it's her coming. She's out of the room right now. But, you know, things like that. So it's even going to, military museums. Those are another great thing. If you go to the Air Force, Museum in New Zealand, there's a picture up there of my grandmother, and her uniform is there. I actually have a photograph of me wearing her uniform the week before I got on the bus to go down for my boot camp. So yeah, there's a lot of memories and stuff and places that you can go. What cultural communities can you go and explore or experience? Maybe it's going out, maybe you're doing a food weekend where you're doing different, like you go to one place for brunch, you go somewhere, you start early, go to a place for brunch, you have breakfast, then you go and maybe have a cup of coffee somewhere with a snack, and then move on to dinner, that sort of thing. And you do fun stuff in between. Maybe you want to do that sort of a weekend. There is so many things that you could do. Maybe it's getting photographs taken, getting formal photographs. Well, not doing a formal photograph shoot with a photographer, but not informal thing. It could be whatever. Maybe it's going to one of those old time places, where they dress you up in costume and do the sepia photographs. Maybe it's going through an art gallery or a museum or I said the museum already. Archives. Archives are fun. Archives are a lot of fun. Maybe it's just going for a wander in your neighborhood. There's all sorts of things that you could do in your area where you use your home as your hotel. It could be you're staying in the home that weekend. But here's the thing. If you're going to stay in your home all weekend, do all the house cleaning and the laundry and stuff before the weekend. So all the normal stuff you do on the weekend, like me on the weekend, I clean house. I do laundry, although I've now switched to doing laundry anytime I feel like it because it's right there. Just through that wall. Yeah. But getting all that stuff done and out of the way so that you don't have to do anything in the house, weeding the garden, whatever, it's already done. So you can take the 2 days off without feeling guilty about the fact that, oh, I really should go clean the bathroom or I should go clean the kitchen. That's already done. So then you could even turn it into a craft weekend. When did you last if you're a crafter, when did you last sit down and had an uninterrupted craft weekend? There's all sorts of stuff. If you've got kids, when did you sit down and have a craft time with the kids or play a board game with the kids? Have a game night or game day. This going out to like farmers markets or petting zoos. I'm trying to think of other things. Stargazing. That's a good one. Get the kids to nap for the afternoon, taking out stargazing that evening. Or even if it's just like laying in the back, if you've got a great view in the backyard, depending on where you're located, you could probably lay out there on the grass in the backyard and just watch the stars. Something I used to, laying on a cloudy day, laying outside and watching the clouds and finding animals and people and all sorts of shapes and stuff inside them. There's so much stuff that you can do out there. Do whatever makes you happy. What's something that yesterday we talked about, if you were given the opportunity to write a 5,000 word book, and yes, you could dictate it onto voice to text, for 5,000 words, which was like 30 to 35 pages, maybe like around a 20 to 30 minute talk. I don't know, because I haven't transcribed any lately. What could you comfortably talk about? maybe it's time that you pulled that activity out again, or did something in that activity for a staycation. So you can refresh everything, refresh your knowledge, learn something new about it, just to get it back in your mind to see what could I talk. If somebody gave me a 30-minute talk, what could I talk about off the cuff with no preparation in advance? It's the same with the book. What could I talk about in 5,000 words, straight off the cuff, that I could turn into a book? Maybe it's something that you could do a staycation on. So anyway, and it could even be something like driving an hour away from your home to a bed and breakfast, and exploring that area, using the bed and breakfast as your hotel, which it is, and exploring that. Brad and I did that one time, going from Virginia to West Virginia one weekend. It rained almost the entire weekend, but we had a blast. The afternoon, after we went out driving around the area in the morning, we couldn't get out and do much because of the rain. But we found this great cafe, which was in an old apothecary, an old soda fountain type place. We went down to Harper's Ferry, had a look around. Well, we couldn't really get out and walk around because it was pouring with rain. It was almost bad enough that we couldn't see what was in front of the car. But we went down to Harper's Ferry, drove around there. That evening we went out to, what's it called? The Washington Inn Tavern. It was something where it had Washington in the title. We went to this great place, and it was one of those early 1700/1800, late 1700, early 1800 type restaurants where everybody's in costume. The food that you are getting is basically what they would have eaten back then. It was a great meal, and also the lights are all lanterns. So it was very dim and dark in there, but the food was incredible. The service was impeccable. It was just an amazing meal. And it was in this old house that was that dated back to the 1800s. So it was a really good experience to do something like that, something historical. If you live near somewhere like Williamsburg, where it's one of those living town things in that period, that's a great thing to do for a weekend. We spent a week in Williamsburg one time, and we still didn't get to see everything and experience everything, but we had a blast. That was a little more than an hour from home, but we stayed at a Marriott Vacation Club down there, and it was about 10 to 15 minute drive from there down to historic Williamsburg. But we had a blast going, and we got the pass for the week, which meant that we could go into, we didn't have to get separate tickets for anything. We just showed up and showed our pass, and we got in to whatever it was. We heard Thomas Jefferson talk twice in 2 different time periods. One was in the early 1800s. The second time we heard him talk was in the backyard of the governor's house, and it was 17. Hang on, what year was the thing? 17. It was just after the 1776. It was just after they had signed the Declaration of Independence up in Philadelphia, and so they were now spreading the news about this, and this was meant to be August of 1776. And the funniest thing was that oh wow, I'm way over time. The funniest thing was that he's standing there in full Thomas Jefferson character, across behind the hedge at the back of the backyard. Behind the hedge was the railway line, and a passenger train went past. And he turns, he looks at it, he looks back at us, he looks at this train again, and I thought, this is going to be interesting. How's he going to deal with this? And he goes, that seems to be a very interesting contrivance that goes from one place to the other rather quickly. I think I might invest in that. It was absolutely hilarious about how something modern day happened, and he's supposed to be a character in 1776. So it was very interesting to watching all of that. And we were there after 9/11 had happened. The year after 9/11 had happened, and there was a guy sitting next to me as we were waiting for the thing to start, and he was talking about how he was there the year before, and they had the George Washington character out, and they were trying to describe, and of course this guy was staying in character in the time period that he was supposed to be in for that thing. And I tell you, these immersive characters are incredible. They know their characters so well inside and out. The life of these people that they portray is just amazing. And he sat there and he said, we're trying to tell him about what had happened with 9/11, and we wanted his opinion on it, wanted his thoughts on 9/11. But of course, we were confusing him because he had no idea what a plane was. He had no idea what a skyscraper was, or what the Pentagon was. So they were having to put it into terms that George Washington would have. So the audience were having to come up with ways to explain to George Washington what had happened on American soil in a language that he would understand in that time period. And I was like, oh my gosh. I said, how did you guys do? He says, it was amazing. And he answered in his time period and gave his thoughts on things. So they managed to get across to him that this bad attack had happened on the US soil. Of course, it wasn't called the US. Yeah, it was called the US back then, but what had happened, explaining what had happened in terms that George Washington in that time period would have understood, and to get his opinion. I thought, wow, that would have been awesome to see. He says, yeah, it was pretty amazing. So you get all these different characters and things. You get to see different trials that happened during that time period in Williamsburg. We saw these pirates. It was absolutely hilarious. Saw these pirates. There was a husband and wife pirate team, and they were blaming each other, and there was a lot of hilarity going on in there, a lot of laughter. And then the next night we were there, it was very serious because there was a woman on trial as a witch. And we were sitting up in the horseshoe area where the judge sits. So the judge is there, and then I was next to the judge, and then Brad, and then Josh was there. And that was a pretty sobering thing. And then a few weeks after we got back from Williamsburg, there was an article in the newspaper that I happened to catch. And it was the governor of Virginia pardoning this woman that we had seen on trial in Williamsburg from being accused of being a witch. So she finally received her pardon, even though it was 400 years later after the incident. So that was kind of cool. So there's all sorts of things that you can do. There's places you can go. There's, if you've got a fair in town or a Renaissance fair or something like that, that you can go do. You even just go hop on a local tour bus and do the tour. Living in San Diego, I loved doing the harbor cruise down there. It was because it was just really cool. We went through all the naval area and went all the way out, and it was a 3-hour trip. You either got to do the south or the north, or you could do both. Because I always came back to the dock in the middle of the cruise to take off those that were just doing the northern part of the harbor or the southern part of the harbor, and let the others on, and we would just stay on. It was a great cruise. Loved that cruise. So there's all sorts of things. San Diego Zoo was a great place to go. And the safari park as well. Love going up there. And we'll just take days off and just go and do that. So there's lots of things around you. It is up to you what you want to do for your staycation and how you want to. Do you want to sit it down and say, okay, we're only spending this much money per person per day? Or do you just want to go, well, let's just plan a staycation from home and to hell with the cost type of thing, or somewhere in between? But, come up with things that are in your area. There's plenty of places. There's always a visitor center of some sort in the area that will tell you what events are on during that time. We'll give you some places that you can go and see. Look for things that are different and unusual that tourists wouldn't normally know about, but the locals absolutely love. So there's all that. Anyway, I'm out of here. I've gone way, way, way over time. So I apologize for that. Not really. That's my show. That's my rules. Anyway, go out, have a super fantastic, sparkling evening, and we'll catch you guys back here tomorrow evening at 6 p.m. Pacific. Hey, go on.